Welcome back, folks. And this episode title is You Don't Need Another Podcast, which is a little counterintuitive, but let's get into this. So, one of the things that I see in my work in doing executive development, and I've been in this game for over 25 years now. I'm a certified executive coach. If you and I don't know each other, I'm Catie Campbell. And I've worked with, at this stage of the game, more than 30,000 leaders across every industry you can think of. Started my career at the Pentagon, and I've worked in corporate America, nonprofits, for-profits, you name it. And one of the things that comes up in, not just in coaching, but geez, in personal development, executive development, leadership development, is what's the next thing I should be doing? What's the next thing I should be doing? And I often get asked things like, what books are you reading? What articles are you reading? What podcasts are you listening to? And I always have a list of things because I can't help myself. I love to learn things. And honestly, I do most of that content consumption, not just for myself, but I do it on behalf of my clients. So I will listen to a podcast that is just about leading in corporate America, but I don't lead in corporate America. But I coach people who lead in corporate America. So I pay attention to those things. But what I hear most often is people who are consuming all of these things, books, articles, videos, you name it. They are people who will also tell me, Catie, I feel stuck. Like, okay. So, they'll say, well, I just feel really stuck. Like, what kind of podcast should I listen to help me out of this? I'm like, you don't need another podcast. And what do I mean by stuck? Most of the people that I'm talking to, they fall into, I would say, like 3 or 4 categories. So one of them could be, I feel stuck in my job. I hate my job. I hate my boss. I hate what I'm doing, that sort of thing. I feel stuck in my job. So my boss isn't great. The pay isn't great. My team isn't up to snuff. I don't have enough resources. I don't have what I need to be successful. I don't think I'm going to get a promotion, or there's not an opportunity for me to get promoted, or I'm not being considered and I feel like I'm being sidelined. I just feel stuck in my job. Cool. So they'll say, is there like a podcast I should listen to? And maybe I can be like, yeah, I just listen to my podcast, but I don't know that that's always going to help. But, what should I do? I'll just dive into some self-help things. And the reality is that's not what's keeping you stuck in your job. I also will hear people who will say things to me, different kind of like stuck. I have a team of people and they're great, but I really can't get them to perform like I want them to. Or, I'll coach. This happens. It's every week. I'll be coaching a leader and they'll say, person X on my team is just not performing. And I'll say things like, are you giving them feedback? Oh, Catie, I'm giving them feedback and I'm trying to hold them accountable, and I'm having the tough conversations with them, and they're still not performing, and I feel stuck because we're not going to make our numbers, and then I'm not going to get my bonus, or I won't be able to promote the people on my team, and they want to get promoted, and I just don't know what to do. I just feel really stuck. Is there like a book I can read? Like, what book should I read to get me out of here? The third category I run into, and this is rampant in the coaching community. And let me just make a caveat here. When I say the coaching community, I'm not talking about what certified coaches will call, like, we call them like lowercase c coaches. These are people who go, oh, I've been in this industry and I'm going to become a coach, or I'm a life coach, but they're not a certified life coach. And that is a thing, right? I'm talking about what I consider to be capital C coaches. So these are people who have gone through a certification program that's vetted, something that's internationally recognized. So most of the people that I refer to as coaches are capital C coaches. We're certified. We do continuing education. And this isn't like woo-woo trust falls, meditating with crystals on our foreheads out in the desert somewhere. We are in a classroom. We're pushing each other to learn new techniques to help people make breakthroughs, whether it's in their life, their professional life, their personal life, what have you. So I'm not talking about these like self-nominated life coaches or, fairy godmothers of, guiding people. No, that's all complete horseshit. I'm talking about capital C coaches. Even in our coaching profession, there are people who just turn into self-help junkies. So this may be you. And if this is you, hopefully this is your intervention to get yourself out of this cycle. But what I typically find are people who say, life's really hard right now, so I'm going to read another book. I'm going to read more articles. I'm going to watch more videos. I'm going to follow certain creators on social media. I'm going to listen to podcasts. I'm going to get a coach. I'm going to get a mentor. I'm going to get a guide. I'm going to go on a retreat somewhere. Now, do I read books? Yes. Listen to podcasts? Absolutely. Watch videos? 100%. Read articles all day, every day. Do I have a coach? Yes. Do I have a therapist? 100%. Thank you to all my therapists who have helped me get to this stage in my life. Do I do retreats? Yeah, I go on retreats, and I also facilitate retreats. And do I follow certain social creators on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and whatnot, YouTube? Yeah, I do, because I get really good ideas from them. Am I a self-help junkie? No, because I do something different than most people who are the junkies. People who are self-help junkies will read a book and go, oh, that book was so inspirational. And then you talk to them a year later and you say, so you read that book and you said it was so inspirational, and what have you done differently? And they kind of look at you like with this glazed over, doe-eyed look, and they're like, well, nothing's really changed. Or they go on a retreat and they're like, oh, it was so fulfilling. I felt so relaxed and rejuvenated and more connected and aligned. And then you talk to them in 6 months and you go, so did you leave that job, or did you get out of that terrible marriage, or, are you making more money than you were before? And they say, well, no. So if you find yourself in one of these categories where you're complaining about your job and you're still in that job, you're complaining about your team or your boss or the organization or even just corporate America more generally, and you're still in corporate America, or you're still with the same company, you're still with the same boss, you still have the same team, and you haven't made any changes. Or if when I describe the self-help junkie, you're like, that's me. Look, you don't need another podcast. What you need is to stop avoiding the hard thing. Now, most times when I talk to people about this, and this, like I said, comes up probably once a week, my job as a coach is to not just be supportive, not just like help people create new insights into their life. Like that is like the step 1 and 2, be supportive, help them create awareness and insights. But the third step is really help to support them towards action. And every time I hear somebody complain about their job, but they're in the same job 6 months later and they haven't updated their resume, they haven't started networking, they haven't put themselves out there, all that's telling me is they're avoiding the hard thing. When I talk to a leader who is complaining about their team or their boss or corporate America or their company, and they haven't changed any of those things, they haven't found a new division to work for, they haven't changed jobs, they haven't switched out team members, and their team members are still performing the same way, I'm like, okay, well. Or when I talk to somebody and they say, oh, Catie, I just read this new book and it was like, it changed my life, or I went on this retreat and it changed my life. But their life really hasn't changed and they're still complaining about the same thing. It's because they're avoiding the hard thing. And I know this also because when I start to push on them and they say, okay, well, why don't you just quit your job? You hate your job, you hate your boss, you feel stuck, just quit your job. Oh, I could never do that without finding another job. Okay. How about you put yourself out there and you try and find a different job? Well, it's impossible right now. Like the market is terrible. It's going to be impossible for me to make time to do that. Okay. Your team's underperforming and you're complaining about the same team members. I'm like, well, what if you switched up the conversation and got super direct about the consequences that are going to happen if this person doesn't start performing well? Oh, I don't know if I could do that. Okay, so it's not that you are stuck because something is keeping you stuck. It's because you're choosing that. If you choose to go on another retreat, read another book, listen to another podcast, and your behavior doesn't change, you don't need another podcast. You need to face what's actually happening. What's actually happening? It's fear. All of this boils down to fear. Why do we keep ourselves in a self-help loop? It feels really good. It feels really good to just get poured into by a great video, a great podcast, a great book, a great retreat. Why do we stay stuck in a loop with our team? Because we know our team, right? So I know that Jim's not going to perform, but at least I know that, right? There's no unknown. If I am in the same job, like I know the system, I know the processes, I know the rules, I know my boss, and I can work around that. So the reality is you're not technically stuck. 9 times out of 10, when someone tells me they're stuck on something, it's not because they're actually stuck. The only people who are stuck is they just don't have the right idea. They don't have a skill. They don't have a tool. But if I can give them an idea, a skill, or a tool, they can get unstuck. They can get out of their way. So it's sort of like having a flat tire and you don't have a spare in your car. If you had a spare in your car, you could change the tire and you could get back on the road. If you don't have a spare, you need the actual tool, a tire, and then you can get back on the road, right? So you're stuck if you don't have a spare tire in your car, but you're not stuck if you do. So if you're just sitting there on the side of the road with a flat tire, you're like, oh, I'm stuck here. There's no way out of this. No, there is a way out of that. You change the tire and you move on. Most people are driving around in their car. They get a flat tire and they say they're stuck, but they have a spare in the back of the car. So the people who are telling me, I hate my job, I hate my boss, there's no way I'm going to get promoted and stuff like that, they are the flat tire on the side of the road with a spare in the back. When you say my team won't perform, I can't get people to follow through, I'm having a hard time holding people accountable, it is somebody who's sitting on the side of the road with a flat tire but a spare in the back. When somebody is a self-help junkie and they read all the books and they listen to all the videos and they go to all the retreats and they spend all this money on trying to better themselves and whatnot, but their behavior doesn't change, and they say they still feel stuck in the life that they're living, they are sitting on the side of the road in a car with a flat tire and a spare in the back. And it is the avoidance of the hard thing. If you've ever tried to change a tire and you're not like a mechanic and you don't do it all the time, it's hard. The first time you do it, it's hard. It's a little weird. You're like, I don't know if this is going to work. Hopefully the tire doesn't fall off the car when I drive away, right? You're a little bit scared to do it. But like once you do it once or twice, it's not the end of the world. And you can get it double checked by a mechanic later on. It's not the end of the world, right? It's a little scary the first time. I get that. But once you change the tire in your car, what do you get to do? You get to drive away. Right? You solve the problem. You're not stuck anymore. When you are sitting on the side of the road, you have a spare tire in the back and you've got the flat tire and you're just like, I don't know, it's really hard. I don't know if I could never do that. I'm going to get super dirty. I could never do that. I'm not sure if it's going to be right. It's going to be impossible for me to do it. I'm not super strong. Strong people can change a tire. Not sure. It's not that hard. So when you are stuck, it's because you are living in a state of fear. And a state of fear, a podcast is not going to solve. Okay. It's just not going to solve it. There's nothing that I can tell you in this podcast that's going to make you go, oh, I'm no longer afraid. The first step in anybody getting unstuck from where they are, unstuck of the self-help loop, unstuck of being in a work situation you don't like or a team that will underperform, is facing the fear that's in front of you. So what does that really look like? Because fear is sort of like a euphemism for other things. It could be the fear of failure. That's a big one. People worried about, I'm going to lose my job. If I leave my job, I'm going to start a new one. And then what if it's not as good as this one? Or what if I can't handle it? This happens all the time when I work with people who are in corporate America and they're like, oh, I've always wanted to run my own business. I'm like, great. I have supported entrepreneurs now for more than 15 years. I can help you think through what that would look like. It's like, oh, I don't know. My family depends on me and I don't know if I could do it. I'm like, well, I'm a single mom. I get it. Like, I have no backstop. Like, I understand what that's like. I can't fail, right? I got to put food on the table and house over my heads for my girls and I, but it's doable. And like lots of people have done it. It's not, there's nothing remarkable about what I've done or most people who've owned their own businesses and made it successful. There's always a fear of failure, but there's a fear of failure for every company that exists. So, but it's important to acknowledge that that's what you're afraid of. So you can say, I feel stuck in my job, but what I'm really saying, the subtext is really, I'm afraid of what might happen if I leave and try and do something else, whatever that is, going to another company, starting my own thing. A lot of times people fear change as well. So I work with a number of leaders who will complain about people on their team that are underperforming or that they know they could get more out of, or they're like, oh, if Steve leaves, that'll open up that'll open up a pathway for other people to take on his work. And we've got other people who would be more talented at doing what Steve is doing, but we got to wait till he retires. Well, no, you don't have to. You could change the team. Or, gosh, I love learning all this self-help stuff, but yeah, eating differently would be, or exercising differently, or, changing my patterns. Like, oof, I don't know if I could do that, right? There's this fear of change, of like, what might life be like when I do something different? So a lot of times when people get stuck in this loop of saying, I am stuck, it's because they're afraid of change. They fear change. And as soon as you listen to this, there's a handful of you that are going to say, oh no, Catie, I'm really great. I'm flexible. I love change. I love it so much. And I'm here to tell you that unless you were 12 years old listening to this podcast, you do not do change well. And I'm sure there's somebody, you're driving in your car going, no, Catie, I'm great at change. I'm so good at changing. But you're also the same person that's going to get pissed off when, your iPhone gets updated and you have to relog into all of your apps. Or you're the same people that bitch about two-factor authentication when you have to try and log into a website. You're like, oh, you used to just be, you put your password in and then you could get to what you wanted to. It's like, oh, yeah, you're great with change. So adults are terrible. The older we get, the more that we like routine, structure, safety, and patterns. We don't like it when things are disrupted. Children are completely resilient to that. They are, for the most part, I'm not saying every single kid to a person, but most children are great about changing things up and novelty and whatnot, but adults are terrible at that. So a lot of times people stay in terrible jobs with terrible bosses. They do not go and try and mix up their team or do something different, or they consume all of this content, podcasts and videos and whatnot, and they're like, yes, that's great. That's inspirational. But do they do anything different? No. And if you want another example of where this, you might have seen this before. You know how every 2 years we have the Olympics, winter or summer games, right? And you watch these athletes and you're like, oh, so inspirational. And they're running and they're swimming and they're skiing and they're skating and they're doing all these things. You're like, I could do that. I need to get back into the gym. And what do? Nothing. You don't do anything different, right? Why? Because it would be hard. What would that be like? I'd have to change my routine. I'd have to work hard. I'd sweat differently, get new equipment. I'd have to try something different. Okay. So we fear change. We fear difference. A lot of times it's the fear of the unknown. I have no idea what will happen. So you go on a retreat, you learn all these new concepts, and you're like, I could apply these. I know how to do it now. I've been given all the tools and resources, but what's going to happen when I start to do it? So I do this retreat with a business partner of mine. His name's Tommy Spalding. We do what's called the Heart-Led Leader Retreat. He wrote the New York Times bestselling book, The Heart-Led Leader. And about 4 to 6 times a year, we do a retreat where we bring about 20 to 25 really smart leaders who want to learn about servant leadership and want to learn about emotional intelligence. And we bring them in for a 2.5-day retreat. And I would say the majority of the people who come to those retreats are wanting to show up differently in their marriages and their relationships and as parents, because many of them are parents or parenting age, and then also for the organizations that they run or the teams that they lead. And what we're trying to help inspire them to do is not just learn about servant leadership or learn about emotional intelligence, but it's to put these things into practice when they leave. And the majority of the people who do come through the retreats do that because they're primed to do that. The ones who don't show up because I think in their head and really in their heart, they want to do these things, but they're worried. What if I try and show up more emotionally intelligent? What if I try and bring love into the workplace? Ooh, I don't know how I would do that. I work at a bank. I don't know how I would do that. I work in construction. I don't know how I would do that. I work in financial services, and that would be weird. That would be different. I'm not sure that I can. And so that fear of the unknown of what's going to happen after they apply what it is that we've taught them, a lot of times will keep people stuck in the exact same loop that they're in. It doesn't mean they stay stuck forever. Sometimes it just takes longer for people to actually make the leap and get into applying what they've learned. But I see that a lot with people who are addicted to self-help kinds of things. They've read all the books and their life doesn't change. They've watched all the videos and their life doesn't change. They go on retreat after retreat and their life does not change. Why? Because they're afraid of what's going to happen if they decide to show up differently. And coupled with that often is the fear of embarrassment. Like, what if I try this and it doesn't work? I did think about this a tiny bit before I started my own business and I left corporate America for good because there was a likelihood that I would be one of the many business owners that try something and it doesn't work. But I kept reading stories instead of like reading stories about people who tried their business and they made it. I started consuming content around people who tried and failed, like failed over and over again, or they tried and it took them a long time working out of a crappy garage or a basement somewhere before they actually hit the right thing. Sarah Blakely, who's the founder of Spanx, is one of my favorite entrepreneurs and founders, simply because she talks about how she was selling fax machines door to door, carrying her red backpack. At the same time, she was trying to, start what now is a global brand that uplifts women and is a very inclusive, supportive kind of environment. She's built a phenomenal, phenomenal company. But she talks about like she was still like digging through the trenches of trying to make it and not knowing whether or not somebody was going to actually pick up her idea. Thank goodness they did. So the fear of like being embarrassed by saying, yeah, I'm going to try this thing and maybe it won't work. So I've done that multiple times. I've done it through different content that I've created, the podcasts that I've done. I've started organizations before and, handed them off to other people, but I never knew if they were going to be successful. I really hoped that they would. But that is something that will keep somebody stuck. There's somebody listening right now, I know it, that has an idea for a business or a nonprofit or a product they could create or a capability or a skill that they could bring to the masses. And they're just sitting on it. And if you are one of these people, the reality is the most successful people that we know, the people who are the biggest names in business, the people who are billionaires, they are not people who spent time worrying about being embarrassed about failure. They embraced it because it actually got them to where they needed to go. So it's embarrassment a lot of times that keeps people stuck because they can't get over the idea that they might fall flat on their face. The last one is kind of coupled with that, which is the fear of exposure. What do I mean by that? So putting yourself out there means that, and really building a brand, building notoriety, building your expertise also means that people are going to find out things about you. They're going to learn things about you. They're going to want to know more about you. And so, I see this all the time, especially on social media. You see people putting themselves out there as an expert or a coach or what have you. And they're the lowercase c coaches, as I described before. They don't know what they're talking about. They absolutely do not know what they're talking about. And once they start getting picked up to work in an organization or work with a team or work with the leader, they get exposed for being a fraud, right? Most people, though, that really have talent, expertise, they have something to share. They go, Catie, I want to leave my job. I want to go do something else. But what if I'm not good? What if people find out that I am not as smart as I think I am? It's like, oh my gosh. It's keeping you in this loop of you've got a gift to share and you're not putting it out there. So I'm not talking about people who just want to be famous for the sake of being famous or, in social media influencer. I'm not talking about those types of people. I'm talking about you. You're somebody who has got 10 years in marketing and you've got some ideas about how to take it to the next level, or you've got 20 years in finance and you'd like to kind of pivot that and bring something new to the masses. Like, you're not going to get exposed. There is no exposure, right? All you're going to be doing is sharing who you are and sharing what you know. And it's a beautiful thing. So you are stuck and you're doing it to yourself. And what I'd love for anyone listening to this episode to take away from this is if you have had any shred of like, yeah, I do that. Yeah, I complain about my boss, but I'm still in the same job. Yeah, I complain about my team members or my direct reports, and I still haven't had the tough conversation with them. Or, yeah, I love consuming all of this content. It's so great. I just want to listen to the next podcast or read the next book. Cool, you're doing this to yourself. This isn't the economy. It's not the environment. It's not gas prices. It's not global disruption that is keeping you where you are. It is you. You're keeping yourself stuck. And there's no amount of complaining or hand-wringing or podcast listening that's going to help you get out of that. So what I'd like you to do in the next week, if you're like, yep, Catie, this is me. Yep, you got me. Like, you don't have to put your hand up and say, yes. You don't have to be fearing the exposure. Like, I'm not going to call you out, and you can call yourself out if you want to. But I want you to think in the next week, take some time to reflect and think about what is it that you're doing that's keeping you in the state of fear? What is it very specifically are you afraid of? Are you afraid of giving direct feedback and having somebody quit? Cool, write that down. Are you afraid of, putting yourself out there and bringing a product or an idea to the market and it not working? Cool, write that down. If you're afraid of really trying to apply some of this self-help stuff that you've been learning and it disrupting your relationship or meaning that, or it's going to mean a lot of different effort from you. Cool, write that down. And I want you to think about if you do these things and your life changes, you give direct feedback and that person leaves, will it be the end of the world? You decide to quit your job and you go hunting for another one that's going to be better and better fit your life. Is that going to be the end of the world? If you actually apply things that you've been learning through books and videos and podcasts and whatnot, and it changes how your life looks, will that be the end of the world? And I'm serious when I say, is it going to be the end of the world? Like, end of the world. Everything is going to come crashing down. You'll have no money, no house, no anything. 99.9% of the time, no, it's not going to be the end of the world. It's not. Will it change things? Yes. Could it be uncomfortable? Absolutely. Will it make you think differently, act differently, show up differently, make different choices? Yeah, 100%. Will it cost money? Sometimes. Will it be an opportunity cost? Maybe. But will it be the end of the world? And 99.9% of the time, the answer is no. So will it be the end of the world? So I want you to write the thing down. I give Steve direct feedback because he sucks at his job, and I finally try and help him, and he quits. Will it be the end of the world? No, it will not. I try to apply this stuff that I learned on a retreat, and my team's acting funny. Is it the end of the world? No, it's not. I decide to quit my job and take 6 weeks to figure out what I want to do with my life before looking for another job. Is it going to be the end of the world? Yeah, no, probably not, unless you're like, 6 months behind in all your bills. Then I want you to write down, what is it that you actually want? So if you're like, I just want Steve to be better at his job. No. You want a high-performing team. I just want my boss to not suck. No. You want to work in an organization that values you for who you are. I just want to watch these videos in my life to change. No, what you want is for things to be easy. What is it that you actually want? If you want your life to be easier, then yeah, you can watch videos and listen to podcasts that will help you do that, to simplify your life, to make things easier. If what you want is for a high-performing team, then there's a whole host of things I could help you with to help you design what being having a high-performing team would look like. I work on that with leaders every single day. If what you want is work for a better organization that really values who you are and what you can bring to the table, yeah, I help people transition out of jobs all the time, which is a little wild, but transition out of jobs and finding a company and a boss or an environment that really values who they are. Okay, so what you want, that's the next thing we have to do. And the final thing is then, what is it going to take for you to actually just do it? So let's take the slogan from Nike. It's easy for me to say, well, just do that. But that's not enough for most people. What is it that what will it take for you to finally say, okay, I'm going to take the leap. I'm going to give Steve the direct feedback. I'm going to take the leap. I'm going to incorporate these things I've been learning in these videos or these podcasts into how I lead or how I live. Okay, I'm going to have a direct conversation with my boss, and I'm going to leave if I don't get the promotion or if I don't get the salary increase or whatever it is. If the answer is, yeah, I'm not going to do that, then you don't need another podcast. Okay. You just need to be comfortable staying stuck for the foreseeable future until you decide to make the change. But if you've listened to all of this and you're like, you know what? I haven't thought about the fact that I am the one that's keeping me stuck. It is not your boss. It's not your company. It's not your team. And it's not these self-help gurus that you're following. Okay. It's you. The problem is you, but you're also the solution at the same time. So what is it that you really want? Would it be the end of the world if you actually tried to implement what you really want? And then what are you willing to do to get it? And if the answer is nothing, stay stuck. If the answer is something, follow along, listen to our next episodes, give me a comment in the below, like follow, subscribe to what we're doing on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We want to hear from you. What are you trying? Because if you're trying something, if you're doing something, then maybe you do need another podcast because this is helping you. If you're trying nothing and you're just staying stuck, you don't need another podcast. But if you are willing to put yourself out there, try and move the ball forward, listen to our next episode, and I hope to get you there.